It's great that an Oscar for Best Casting has finally been introduced. Having actors that fit the characters well goes such a long way towards making a movie credible and authentic. And poorly judged casting choices can heavily undermine or even outright ruin a film altogether. Just ask these following 10 recent flicks. I'm Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are the 10 dumbest miscastings in recent movies. Number 10, Zawe Ashton, The Marvels. The Marvel Cinematic Universe's biggest box office bomb to date wasn't very good overall, with arguably the single biggest mistake being lead villain Dar-Ben. He was one of the very worst MCU villains of them all, and miscasting played a big part in that. Zawe Ashton is a more than capable actor who's given plenty of good performances in other things, yet it's hard to see why she was cast here. Ashton didn't quite have the physical prowess or sinister screen presence to convince as a wrathful villain, and she seemed totally lost in the role. Again, Ashton is very much a good actress, and there are many other roles in the ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe that she could have excelled in. Dar-Ben just was not one of them. There are plenty of other actors of both sexes, Dar-Ben is male in the comics, that could have been cast in this role instead, so such a flagrant miscasting seems a bit odd. Sadly, that applies to the rest of the casting decisions on this list as well, folks. But before we get there, I want to know right now, what do you think is the greatest bit of MCU casting ever? You can't just go straight for Robert Downey Jr., think of somebody else. Number 9, Denzel Washington, Gladiator II. Alright, this one is gonna be a bit controversial, as Denzel Washington was widely touted as the best thing in the wildly overhated Gladiator II. But was he really? Yes, Denzel did good work in many ways, especially in the first 2 acts of the film, but he still wasn't right for the part, folks. And him not being nominated for a Best Supporting Actor Oscar was far from the snub that some decried it as. Firstly, it was distracting to hear Washington use his normal American accent, despite the fact that he was playing a character from ancient Rome. You know, this was thousands of years before America as we know it even existed. Secondly, once the character graduates from morally ambiguous figure to full-on hammy villain in the film's final act, Washington doesn't quite have the physical prowess to portray a formidable villain. He might look fantastic for his age, but Denzel is now 70 years old and can't quite pull off the action hero roles like he used to do. The final duel is between Paul Mescal's strapping young protagonist and a 70-year-old who doesn't look that comfortable swinging a sword, and no prizes for guessing who wins that fight. Spoilers, I guess? Who do you think would have been a better fit for the role? Or do you disagree with this entry entirely? Either way, let me know. Number 8, Giancarlo Esposito, Captain America: Brave New World. Despite being so heavily featured in the trailers, Sidewinder/Seth Volker, played by Giancarlo Esposito, isn't actually in Captain America: Brave New World very much, which is yet another sign of how troubled this movie's production was. The main villain is actually the leader, while Sidewinder is only in a few action scenes before disappearing from the movie. That was probably for the best though, as Sidewinder was a fairly dull character, and they did not have the right man for the job. This is a similar case to Denzel in Gladiator II. They needed an actor who could hold their own in the action scenes a bit better. The thing is, Sidewinder is very much a physical villain, a killer soldier who uses actions rather than words to destroy his enemies. Esposito is a great actor, of course, not to mention a master at playing antagonists, but he is now in his mid-60s. Although he executes the dialogue scenes very well, because of course he does, he couldn't quite pull the fight scenes off convincingly. Again, this part just needed a more physical actor. Someone like Keanu Reeves would have been a strong choice, perhaps, if he was available. I don't know, I've not spoken to him lately. Number 7, where to begin? Amelia Perez. The audacious yet ultimately unsuccessful Amelia Perez, which was arguably the villain of the 2025 awards season, is a unique genre blender. It's a musical about a Mexican cartel boss who fakes their death so that they can undergo a sex change operation and start living life as a woman, but soon finds that she is unable to escape her past. This is a movie set in Mexico and about Mexican characters, so you'd reasonably assume that they'd actually, cast Mexican actors? Or at the very least, actors who could speak Spanish properly and with convincing Mexican accents. Instead, Instead, Amelia Perez only features one Mexican actor in a noteworthy role, and the rest of the cast were criticized for their inauthentic accents and line deliveries, and deservedly so. Selena Gomez, in particular, came under heavy criticism, and even the Oscar-winning Zoe Saldana, who was by far the best performer in the film, struggled a bit in this regard. Had Amelia Perez bothered to cast people who were closer to the culture it was trying to depict, then these problems and all the controversies the film faced throughout awards season could have easily been avoided. Number 6, Bryce Dallas Howard, Argyle. Bryce Dallas Howard is a talented actress, and she's shown this on plenty of occasions over the years. She just about emerged unscathed from the ill-judged Jurassic World trilogy, during which she outran a T-Rex in high heels like an absolute boss, and has given many powerful performances in works such as The Help, the Black Mirror episode Nosedive, and even in a couple of regrettable M. Night Shyamalan joints, those being The Village and Lady in the Water. She can produce a good, dramatic performance, that much we know. But can she pull off an action hero role? Well, based on Argyle, perhaps not. She was just fine when her character was more of a comedic figure, presented as a bewildered author on the run. But once the character was revealed as a former spy with amnesia, she didn't look comfortable in the action scenes and didn't quite have the badass charisma to pull the part off. As is the case with pretty much every role on this list, there were many obvious choices they could have gone for here instead, like Emily Blunt or Halle Berry maybe. And as such, this is another head-scratcher really. After all, casting a bigger name who's more of a box office draw might have saved Argyle from flopping as badly as it did. I stress might. And a more suitable lead than the still very much talented Howard might have made it less of a chore to sit through as well. I hope this video that you're watching right now is not a chore to sit through, and if it's not and you're finding it quite interesting, then smash that subscribe button down below for more where this sort of what culture stuff came from. Number 5, Shailene Woodley, Ferrari. Many miscastings seem to happen because they insist on throwing in as many big-name actors as possible into a movie, regardless of whether or not they actually fit the role at all. Shailene Woodley's casting in Michael Mann's largely solid Enzo Ferrari biopic seemed to be a case of this. Woodley is a wonderful actress who unfortunately did lose her momentum a bit in the late 2010s. Starring in the Divergent franchise, a series so disliked that the final film was never even released, probably had something to do with that. As such, it's always nice to see her appearing in stuff, and it's a crying shame that her role in Ferrari fell so flat. She plays Lena Lardi, the mistress of Ferrari founder Enzo Ferrari. And while the mannerisms in Woodley's performance are fine, there's one big problem. She could not do a convincing Italian accent. Her Native American twang keeps slipping in, and her performance just felt stilted all the way through as a result. The simple thing to do here would have been to just hire an actor who's, actually Italian. There are plenty of those around. The White Lotus Simona Tabasco would have been a good choice, for example. But nope, we went with Woodley and it just, sadly didn't work. Number 4, the whole main cast, Borderlands. This particular case showed off a flagrant lack of respect to the source material. So much so that it would honestly seem that the people who made this have never actually played the Borderlands games. In regards to the main group of characters, Jack Black was a solid, if unimaginative, casting for the voice role of Claptrap the Robot, but no one else seemed at home in their parts. None of the actors are much like their video game equivalents. Cate Blanchett and Jamie Lee Curtis are literally decades older than their game counterparts, Lilith and Patricia Tannis respectively, who are much younger in the games. And casting the famously short Kevin Hart to play Roland Greaves, whose game counterpart is big and muscular, was another inexplicable choice. What were they thinking? Unsurprisingly, these ridiculous casting choices made fans uneasy from the very beginning, and many predicted that this movie would join the long line of failed video game adaptations. And those who predicted that were absolutely, correct. And the film was, if anything, even worse than expected. Impressive. Number 3, Joaquin Phoenix, Napoleon. As if Ridley Scott's Napoleon biopic wasn't disappointing enough already, it also features one of the worst miscastings in recent memory. Joaquin Phoenix might be one of the greatest actors of his generation, but casting him as Napoleon was a ludicrous decision, for the simple reason that he is literally 20 years too old to play him. Throughout most of the film's events, Napoleon was in his 20s. So why did they cast a man who's visibly in his late 40s for this? One of the reasons why Napoleon is such a famous historical figure is that he achieved all of those astonishing victories when he was a very young man. So casting an actor the right age was vital to convey what an undeniably extraordinary man he was. Even ignoring the age aspect, Phoenix is an actor who excels at portraying turmoil and dark, eccentric characters, so he wasn't necessarily the right pick for this charismatic leader. Now, Napoleon was always going to be a hard role to cast, to be fair, but this still stands out as a particularly bad casting choice, especially as Phoenix fails to hide his American accent throughout the movie too. Yet this whole thing was a very strange cinema experience for me, and that's just one way of putting it. Number 2, Gal Gadot, Snow White. Yeah, this one always seemed like a recipe for disaster, didn't it? Look, it's clear that Gal Gadot was cast due to her being a big name, and it would seem no one stopped to think as to whether she was remotely right for the part of the evil queen, who was a fantastic villain in the original Snow White animation. To be blunt, Gadot is a deeply limited performer. She's good as a warm, likable action hero, such as Wonder Woman or Giselle in the Fast and Furious films, but she just doesn't have the range or gravitas to realize this villain in all her hateful glory. She's a bit too likable, both on-screen and off-screen, to convince as a villain, and she previously fell into a similar trap when she gave a weak performance as a toxic, self-centered heiress in 2022's Death on the Nile. Furthermore, the whole idea is that this queen is so vain that she can't deal with not being the fairest in the land. It's a bit hard to buy one of the most attractive people in Hollywood being worried about that. Gadot's performance was indeed appallingly bad, and arguably the worst thing in an already dire movie. Quite frankly, she deserves to get a Razzie nomination for her work in this film. But then again, it's inexplicable that she was cast in the first place. Number 1, Sydney Sweeney, Madam Web. There are stupid casting choices, and then there's this. The role of Julia Cornwall, a shy and awkward 16-year-old girl who is destined to become Spider-Woman, or one of them anyway, could have been played by many a talented young actor. But instead, they cast Sydney Sweeney. Now, the often underestimated Sweeney is a fantastic actress who's proven her naysayers wrong many times over with a wide variety of diverse performances. But however versatile she undeniably is, not all parts are going to be suitable for her. That's the case with any actor. Even chameleons like Daniel Day-Lewis and Gary Oldman won't be able to fit into every role that's thrown their way. Such is the case here. At the time of filming, Sweeney was 26 and not remotely convincing as a 16-year-old. This was made even more distracting by the fact that she's widely associated with, let's say, mature roles in a variety of R-rated projects, such as HBO's Euphoria and Anyone But You. Speaking of which, Sweeney apparently agreed to do this dreadful film with great reluctance, no doubt, just so that Sony would give Anyone But You the green light. Still, couldn't they have cast her in a more appropriate role? In short, if there's one recent casting choice that makes you wonder what the casting team was smoking, well, it's this one. Now continue your YouTube journey with What Culture by tapping on another video right here in front of your face. Oh, you're gonna have so much fun. I'm jealous, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.